All right, welcome to the Landman Season 2, Episode 3, the recap with Warren Martin from Kansas Strong, myself, Jason Spiess. And Warren, is MTEX getting involved with the cartel? That is the headline we have currently right now at the Crude Life. And before we get into the reviews and everything along those lines, what'd you think?
I think that they are already involved with, from several of the statements that were made throughout the show, I think they're already involved with the cartel, and they just didn't know it. And I think Andy Garcia, his character, is making Danny is making
Yep.
it absolutely clear that you're already in bed with us.
He's added a new twist to the show that certainly accelerates a lot of the storylines. Um, Looking at some of the other spoiler alert, folks, spoiler alert, no Sam Elliott in this episode. It's big spoiler alert. So, Warren, should we even do the show? No Sam Elliott. So,
Um, I'm out. I even started growing my mustache for this, just for that review. I mean, I guess I'm out.
so obviously we're big Sam Elliott fans here, but we'll push on here as we continue with our Landman reviews and reactions. Warren Martin, you know, obviously I like to do a little chronological here and kind of start with the recap of last episode, how they kind of set up everything, and uh, you know the reminder that the new investor is a problem. They made sure that we were reminded of that, and of course Andy Garcia's character is that quote unquote problem. Unbelievable juxtaposition throughout the episode, how they really did some social narrative on that, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Father uses company resources to help out the competition, who's his son. So we kind of have a little bit of that in the recap. And then the untouchables and the entitlement class. They made sure to show that the women are making a name for themselves in this show as well. But then we get into the opening sequence, which I thought was fantastic for a variety of reasons, Warren. I think I wrote down about 15 different bullet points on this. It starts out where they're doing some wild boar hunting. And that alone right there, Paramount Plus, Landman, and anybody else listening, that is an ESG score annual report right there, because that is a social commentary on the feral hog problem down in Texas. And that literally is one of the things that banks look for, investors look for, this whole ESG thing. So that's an example I wanted to point out. But Warren, the wild boar hunting, which is common down in Texas, uh, creates a real life problem, which in this instance, it was a H2S leak. There's many different leaks in the oil and gas industry, but show starts off right away. We got a silent but deadly leak going on. Great hook, great safety. This is your platform, Warren. This is where we're at. What'd you think of that opening sequence?
So I'll go on two different veins. First, I'll go on the wild boar. That's a big deal in Texas right now. The wild hog situation there, they're taking over huge portions of Texas. We have a ranch down. Our family has a ranch down in Texas where we do wild pig hunting on it, just to try and keep the population under control. And no matter how many we hunt, we can't keep the population under control. You know, you got hunts you can go on down there, like the one portrayed in the show, or you can go rent a helicopter and shoot them from a helicopter. And the reality is they are outbreeding all efforts to eradicate the pigs in those areas, or even to control the pigs in those areas. And it's not just a West Texas problem. When I was in Pakistan and worked in Pakistan for a number of years, wild hogs are a problem in Pakistan. It has to do with that certain type of terrain and climate that is just conducive to wild pigs breeding. And so that is big business in Texas right now. I thought it was greatly portrayed. A lot of people might think that that was just, some people that are out there that are just being extremely over the top and exotic. But no, that's a pretty common thing. Everything from people hunting in their trucks to these to going up in helicopters.
My hand is raised here. And that is one of those, like I mentioned, the ESG thing where you insert that because you could have done a pipeline leak in a variety of different ways. But to introduce this safety concern and this real life issue through the wild boar issue, which is extremely common, like we mentioned, up in my neck of the woods. I'm 3 hours from the Canadian border, and up here they're called super hogs or super pigs. It's the same issue because a pig is one of those smart animals, ladies and gentlemen. And what happens with a pig is that when it becomes wild, like if it's born into domestication, it is the only animal that, if introduced in the wild, will become feral. It grows tusks. It actually gets these bristles and hairs on their body in new ways. And so, Warren, I've always been told that's the biggest issue with these pigs is that for some reason their DNA resets them back to that feral primate that they came from ancestrally, which is, from my understanding, the only species that does that. Are you hearing that down in Texas, or what's your knowledge on that?
I don't have any real knowledge on that. I just know that you're talking about domesticated pigs that are breeding with wild pigs. And so you kind of have this kind of like a pack of dogs that joins up with a pack of coyotes. And so you get that element going, but they can be extremely dangerous, from the standpoint of they will go into a pig, or excuse me, they will go into a deer, like a deer blind, and they will take a deer feeder and crumble it up into a ball, and the metal and everything up into a ball. They are extremely destructive. You get them out into the fields and a lot of the agricultural land, they'll get down and they'll start pulling up a row of soybeans or whatever, and they'll start pulling up that row and they'll just go down the entire row and they can decimate an entire field. And so it is a huge agricultural problem in many parts of Texas.
Folks, you can go down a rabbit hole of these YouTube videos. I mean, they'll go on to a patio, in a rural suburb area and just mow through. They're like locusts out in a field, but hogs. And so, anyway, as I mentioned, a great example of ESG and social commentary in terms of the issue of the feral hogs, introducing shifts quickly into I thought it was a CO2 pipeline leak at first, just because, the kind of the news that's in the air, and a lot of up in my neck of the woods, there's so much of the CO2 leaks going on, but it's an H2S leak, hydrogen sulfate leak, highly dangerous. It's that rotten egg smell, Warren. Of course, they have their safety equipment on that ends up saving their lives. Walk us through this, because to me, this was an industry moment right here. This was one of those moments that if you're in the industry like Warren Martin is, or you're part of these national organizations, this is where, in my opinion, they did an excellent job of letting people know really how dangerous this is and how there are some safety measures in place versus the Army, for crying out loud, right? Wasn't that the Army that got taken out?
No,
They
it
said it was
wasn't.
a tank.
It wasn't the Army. It was that was the pig hunters that got taken out. And
Yeah,
they
didn't they have a tank or something?
well, they had an armored Jeep, and basically
That's it. Okay.
armored Jeeps to keep any pigs from turning back on the vehicle, and it protects you in the vehicle. Also, mostly it protects you from driving through all the mesquite bushes out there, because mesquite bushes have thorns, and you can drive right through the mesquite bushes without it taking out whoever's on the. If you drive through a mesquite bush in a regular Jeep, with the doors off of it, it'll just tear you up on the sides. We've done it before. And so the armor around it's predominantly to protect you from the mesquite bushes that are out
Okay.
there. But it was the pig hunters that were taken out. And
Yes.
those pig hunters that were taken out, this is a great example of, Hollywood takes everything to the extreme. And so H2S, or hydrogen sulfide, is an extremely dangerous gas. Yes, in very low quantities, it smells like rotten eggs, but most people never smell that, because the number one thing that it does is, as soon as it hits you, it begins to neutralize your nervous system. And the first thing it neutralizes is your ability to smell. And so most people only get a faint whiff of it before it already has overcome them and has taken them in. It's heavier than air, so they were accurate in portraying it, that it sticks towards the bottom of the ground. It does blow on the wind. Uh, this is it's pretty Hollywood-esque in the fact that it blew a quarter of a mile and took out an entire group of men that were hunting hogs down there. That's really doesn't happen a whole lot. The biggest areas where you have real concern of H2S is like at a refinery or at a tank battery. A major tank battery has huge amounts of crude oil. And what produces H2S is when organic material begins to decompose. And so you have H2S concerns when it comes to sewer systems. You have H2S concerns when it comes to swamps and bogs where you have organic material that is breaking down, and hydrocarbons begin to break apart. When the hydrocarbons begin to break apart, carbon tends to join together with oxygen to produce CO2, and the hydrogen tends to bond with sulfide, which produces hydrogen sulfide. And so I was kind of curious, the way that they were doing this are out in the middle of a field, which is not really common. People who are out in the field, the person that's in the most danger is generally the guy in the movie that they sent up on top of the tank. And when they send him up on top of the tank, where you have major H2S concerns is when you open that tank. If you have crude oil in there that's been sitting for a very long time, been stagnant for a very long time, you can have higher H2S quantities that are there. That's why they wear those monitors to monitor for those things. But normally is very localized out in the field like that to right immediately around the tank battery. I think it is a safety issue. One of the things I talk about when I go into schools: never get around pump jacks, never get around tanks, because you can have these gases that collect right around the site where it's at. In this case, I was wondering how they were going to get to it, but they set it up with a lightning strike that hit the tank battery, and that lightning strike obviously caused some disruption, which allowed the H2S to escape. And they clarified that it had been there for a very long time, had never been picked up, never been collected. And so they did all the right things to set it up to where it is a possibility. However, H2S that expansive to take out that many people, that would be a very, very, very rare out in the field. But it is something that is a safety concern for everybody working in the oil and gas industry anytime you're around crude oil, because if that crude oil is breaking down, you do have an H2S concern.
Now, I did look up the history behind it, and it is a rare occurrence. It has happened. And the one that they seem like they're pulling from was from like 1975, 1976. And it like killed 6 people. And it was the one that actually created the regulation. It's the one that created the safety equipment and just we've talked about this in agriculture and energy. And, unfortunately, they're being first is not always best in these industries because hey, someone's got to take one for the team, so to speak. And then there was a couple of other ones throughout, like basically one a decade. It seemed like there was some kind of leak that happened, either H2S or another kind of leak within the industry that creates a deal. Go ahead.
Most of the exposure that happens in the oil and gas industry is not from any type of a leak. Most of the exposure that happens in the oil and gas industry is when someone climbs up on top of a tank and actually opens the tank door to test the oil that's inside the tank. And that's when most of the exposure in the industry, it's when you're at the highest vulnerability for exposure in the industry.
I will say this. When I was out doing a show in the Bakken, we had somebody from the forestry department on, and I didn't realize that the ground does get struck by lightning like hundreds of times in a night. It's very normal for lightning strikes to happen. They showed me this grid and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like I had to look it up later after they left. They're the expert and I had to fact check them, right? Oil executives, let's see.
And if I could add one more point.
Yep, go ahead.
just a technical point that's there is the fact that you had that high quantities of H2S and the leak was caused by a lightning strike. H2S is extremely flammable, even more so
Yeah.
than most of your hydrocarbons that are there. And so it's the lightning strike might not have been the best way to set up a potential leak. Corrosion might have been a better way to do that because most likely if there was that high quantities of H2S and a lightning strike occurred, it would have caused an explosion rather than just a leak.
Well, another training program in the patch happened. This one here, Jerk in the Bar, shows how they work hard and play hard, getting second jobs. Cooper and Ariana are on the splits, it looks like, and they're showing that different side of what it's like out in the quote unquote real world in the patch. I thought the Jerk in the Bar was pretty spot on. I thought he was, flashing his money. Thought that the, money allowed him to say what he wanted and earned him the right. And I don't know too many women that behave like her, to be honest. I know a lot of them that would like to. That's about my takeaway on that, Warren. Not much, just kind of, okay.
Yeah, I think that definitely was not industry specific in any way, shape, or form. I think that would cross parallels with any industry that you want, where you have people that have money going into a bar. That it's just part of our psychology that some people think that money is what opens the door for them to be able to do whatever they want to do. Definitely, Angela, Tommy's wife, is very much in that vein that believe that money gives you. We saw that in the last episode, and it's this kind of continuing theme that I think we see in all industries, where there are certain elements that think if you have money, you can do whatever you want to do, and the money will get you out of that situation. And I think you lose perspective of that when you get back down to the ground level, and you get down to Ariana, who's working behind the bar in the real world, and where her integrity is more important to her than any money you're going to flash in front of her. And so I think, again, they're setting her up to be a strong female lead, where she's going to be, she doesn't want money handed to her. She doesn't want an easy lifestyle. She wants to earn whatever position that she has in this world. And I think they're setting her up to be a really strong lead.
Before we jump into the next topic, I am going to make a quick little side note, if you will, as an example at a storyline, and this is the underlying storyline. The Jerk in the Bar was an executive. It wasn't a guy in the field. And when I was growing up, it was the guys in the field doing the cat calling and being the jerks. And it was never the person with a collar. The white collar was always the square, the person that's going to bring civility. This is flipped. So I'm going to get into that a little bit later, but there's an Easter egg for us there, Warren, because I noticed that was played out pretty hard in this deal. My next note I have down is so happy that the cartel is in an office. It's not in a jungle. It just shows that it's real, that a cartel is a business now. It's hey, could be you, could be me, could be anybody now. So what's your takeaway at that note I made, that the cartel is in an office? And I'm happy for that, actually, so they can show real life.
Yeah, I think that really plays well with what's actually happens in the world, because a lot of us, we have this idea that when you're talking about people who are dealing in drugs, the cartels, we're thinking of the tattooed guy that's tattooed from head to toe, that is running around in a beat up old car and throwing, flashing his guns everywhere. But the reality is that it doesn't matter how much money you make in an illicit industry. For that to do any good to anybody anywhere, even to the cartel heads of the cartels, they have to find some way to launder that money to make it quote legitimate, to be able to bring it back into the public to be able to capitalize on it and utilize it. And we see all of these drug busts. It's been an ongoing problem ever since we went back to Nancy Reagan telling us to just say no. The problem was the same then as the problem is now, and that's the fact that we keep going after these drug cartels and busting these underlings that are out there in the field, while the people who are running these cartels oftentimes are walking among us, as quote legitimate businessmen and women. And so I think that was a great capitalization on that and bringing that into the real front for us, and really showed how easy it was to suck in Tommy and Cooper into the cartel's mix because they thought they were getting legitimate money, or it had the air of legitimacy that was there. And so they were in it before they knew it.
Didn't you think there was a little bit of confusion on that? And I have that down in my notes a little bit because the cartel money angle is interesting. He's your son, so I'm partners with you. The money, the terms, it's industry standard. It was almost like they were trying to make the cartel the normal voice, and the way that Billy behaved, and then they showed the cartel right afterward. It was almost like Sheridan was trying to show that Billy's behavior was more like a stereotypical cartel thug than anything that Andy Garcia's character was. That was seriously one of my takeaways, Warren.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely true from the standpoint of, he thought he was dealing with the guy that pulled him out of a basement last episode from getting the pulp beat out of him, and he thought he was dealing with someone who was out in the field as a soldier, and he came into the office pretty well unprepared. There's a couple things that Andy Garcia's character really alluded to that I think are kind of interesting. In the fact that we're already partners, you're already in this kind of ideas. We're already partners. You're already in this, helping your son out. I've already done you a favor, and the immediate inference was that I've saved your life. So every breath you take is a favor that I've done for you. But there's also this idea of why they were in the restaurant. They were in the restaurant looking for this investment company that has already that's paying the bills on all of these notes that were there. And so I'm kind of intrigued to see if the cartel has already been involved in the oil company even before what Cooper did, if the cartel was already involved in there. And
Let's follow that thread because that's much more interesting than the other stuff that I have written down here. Cooper working with house money, Tommy gearing up for the panhandle. Okay, so the interesting scene now with the lawyers and the money. There was kind of a Cliff Notes version of how to play a shell game. And, and I'm not talking about Royal Dutch Shell here. I'm talking about the shell game of moving money here in this company. And, you've got each department becomes a new company now, but you use a couple like accounting and maybe a couple other HR departments and administration as a central hub for the corporation. But, if you've got, if you're building a house, your deck company is a separate company. Your plumbing company is a separate company. And you're doing them all, but each company is a separate company. And so other industries do it too, folks. It's not exclusive to the oil and gas industry. And this is why I thought it was kind of interesting because they were given kind of a Cliff Notes version of how they play the shell game. Did you see that at all, Warren?
yeah, I saw that. The one thing that interested me about that is how it differed from a lot of the independents that I'm familiar with. I mean, we've got a lot of independents that diversify, and so you have an oil company that regularly needs asset service or regularly needs whatever it is. So you open up a trucking company, you open up a service company that's its own separate company. It's still under you, but you open up a service company. All those trucks need tires, so you go and buy a tire company and you open up a tire company. and they're interrelated. And a lot of the independents I know of that are successful and begin to grow, they do begin to diversify like that, because why give my money to another service company when I can own my own, give my money to myself, so that comes back, the profit comes back to me, and then also sell those services to other independent producers who don't have that. That's pretty normal. What I was really surprised by is they didn't bring any outside industries into that conversation, because most of the oil and gas independents that begin to diversify, they diversify by getting into real estate. They diversify by buying into gyms, or buying into restaurants, buying into different types of industries, where when the oil and gas industry is down, those other industries can help pick up their company overall and keep their profits up. And so you kind of hedge your bets against that boom bust psychology. If everything's in the oil industry, then when the oil industry busts, everything you own busts. And so that was the only thing that I really stood out to me, because it's pretty common practice in a lot of industries, but a lot of times there's a lot more diversification that crosses industry lines to try and hedge your bets against those boom and bust cycles.
And one of the things that you're talking about, in my opinion, is American growth. This is what you're talking about, is capitalism type of a thing. And that's, a lot of independents do that. But the bigger companies, it becomes a shell game, because you don't know where your money is. You don't know what's going on. And so in this episode, they start trying to put together the puzzle of, where's our money? So they go to the private club. I actually wrote in my notes before Billy Bob went on his rant that, oh, I'm glad they went downstairs into the private area that nobody can get into. And then they actually did point out that it is a private club. It's not a restaurant. We pay for the right to abuse people in front of you. We pay for the right to do this stuff. But there was a lot to unpack from that scene. Let's start with the private club versus the restaurant. They're following the shell club money. Even the money manager doesn't want to be transparent, Warren. I mean, boy, what a scene, huh? I mean, you don't, I've been in the media, okay, publishers. We're talking about newspaper publishers. So, yeah, I've been in the basement of steakhouses and seen things like that over the price of paper, price of ink, okay? I've been around that before. But what say you, Warren, about that private club versus restaurant scene?
Yeah, I think that, private clubs, I mean, that's the reason people join private clubs. Private people join private clubs because they want to be able to do things that they can't do in the general public. Certainly have meetings that they normally wouldn't have in a restaurant. And it's also a place to entertain and impress people. The one thing that shocked me most about that was that Tommy hits the financial advisor over the head with a beer bottle, and the financial advisor gets up and talks to him. I've seen a lot of beer bottles in my life, and you get hit over the head with one of those, you're not standing back up. I can tell you that right now. But
but hang on, to be fair, it was that imported Ultra. It was that that expensive Ultra. So who knows? It could have been sugar glass. Anyways, go ahead.
But I've had meetings in a lot of private clubs, and one of the reasons that you do that is for access. For when a meeting goes longer than the restaurant would normally kick you out, you do get to stay around, and because that's what the club is there for. They're predominantly there to do business. That's what those types of clubs are there to do business. They're there to build those relationships, and so definitely. There are benefits to being a part of a private club. There's no doubt about that.
Another note I have from the money scene was a 100% a good old boy club scene. That there was no doubt about it. Demi Moore's character Cammie, she goes in to find her money, and they're not being transparent with her. They don't want to tell her where it is. They're avoiding her calls. Warren, she's the boss. She's the main cheese now. And the good old boys, well, hey, you're not, you're just the wife. That's how I took that scene. Yeah, that's how I took it. How about you?
I took it a little bit different than that. I think you're right on that, from the standpoint of that he didn't see it as her money, but I don't know that he didn't see it as her money because of the good old boy scene and the fact that she's the wife, as much as it is. I think you get into a lot of companies where you have all of these players that are a part of building the company. And then when the CEO disappears, the CEO dies, there's a sense of ownership that it's my company. And we find that in everyday language when people go up and you start talking to them and they'll talk about, well, my business. Well, you don't own the business. You just work there. But we still refer to it as my business. And so I saw it much more as all of these people who have their fingers in the pie see the company now as their company. And she's trying to set the record straight that no, it's not your company, it's my company.
She's she's a very interesting character, and we'll get into the final scene in a moment because that's pretty layered. That final scene, I'm very curious your thoughts on that. But we're still in the private club. The good old boys, they got a bottle over the head and set straight that even though it's the wife, you answer the phone call. She's now in charge. She's the boss. So perk up. Andy Garcia's there. It's the cartel scene. Interesting juxtaposition. Right when Billy Bob hits the guy over the head with a bottle, roughs him up like a thug, there's Andy Garcia just drinking a nice, expensive cocktail with a nice, expensive cigar, looking like, the civil one. I thought that was an interesting social commentary and something I think the oil and gas industry should pay attention to, Warren.
Well, I think it definitely showed that Tommy's out of his league when it comes to meeting in the Crystal Palace or meeting in the private club. That's not Tommy's home ground. He's used to being out in the field and dealing with everybody out in the field and being the ramrod that was backed up by a powerful man behind him. And now he really in that scene he took more of the role of the thug. But even in that scene, when he took more of the role of the thug, it came back to her, and it came back to her and her saying, "It's my company, it's my money. When I call, you pick up the phone. I don't need you to tell me that. I need you to do it." Where it kind of we were talking at the end of last season, is Tommy going to take over this company? And that scene really made it clear. No, he's still the henchman.
Mm-hmm.
He's still the thug that's there to back up the boss.
Of course, last season, Tommy was in that same situation, a little more beat up and on his knees when Andy Garcia's character, Galliano, it's Gallino, Galliano, Andy Garcia's character, of course, head of the cartel, saves Billy Bob, Tommy Norris, and now Tommy is the one administering the violence and the destruction in front of him. Rather interesting, I thought. Then now another piece of arm candy is introduced. Bella, the beautiful Bella. And oh boy, did they hit the nail on the head there with those two women just hugging and hyping and just over the topping, everything about it, man. I just a little goes a long way. I'll just say that.
Absolutely. And the crazy thing is any other show, Bella would have stole the scene as the flirty kind of airheaded eye candy that's just there. But with Angela there, she seemed pretty normal compared to Angela. So.
Well, and we'll get into that a little bit later because Demi Moore notices that as well. Um, we'll keep on that. So, Demi Moore now, when Bella and Angela are being the arm candy, just being that's what they're there for. That's there's a good old boys, and there you go. And Demi Moore has this kind of Zen Buddhist moment with the fun and games. And it's interesting now because what's happening here from a producer and director's standpoint, at least in my opinion, what I'm observing is Cammy, Demi Moore's character, is taking the role of the patriarch, the traditional patriarch, and also the wisdom keeper. So, normally that's Morgan Freeman and that guttural voice of his, right? And normally that's the Wilford Brimley with his mustache. Normally it's an old man that's the wisdom keeper. And, generally, a middle, a good-looking man with the chest and that, Superman, Christopher Reeves looking person as your patriarch. Well, Demi Moore, she's taking on both of them. Did you notice that she's kind of the grounding, the Buddhist and the patriarch and the wisdom keeper, Warren?
Yeah, she's actually taking the role I thought Sam Elliott was going to be in, coming in, and and we're yet to see where we're going with Sam Elliott, but she's really kind of taken that role where she is that wisdom that I thought he was going to bring to the show this season.
Continuing here with Cammy, they're foreshadowing, the lawyers and the conflict with Cammy, Demi Moore, Andy Garcia. So the cartel, Andy Garcia's character basically says, "Hey, I'm an investor. I invest in people. Looking to invest." She says, "Let's do it," or at least lets you believe that probably they're going to. And so that's interesting because now they're kind of dismissing Tommy a little bit. And the cartel is basically going to use Tommy to control the son. And then now they're going to have the relationship with Demi Moore. Whether that opens up into a romantic one, who knows? I mean, hey, it's Dallas, right? So you could have affairs going on. Yeah, you got the beautiful Bella, but it's all there. But Demi Moore's character, Warren, she kind of had this out of body experience. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people on the internet pontificating about the final scene where she's just breaking down, screaming and crying. And it's like that club experience, seeing those two pieces of arm candy, watching the whole, just as Billy Bob Thornton's character, Tommy Norris, put it, it's like a real life cartoon. Like, is this my life now? Is this what I'm choosing to get into? Like, is this what I was before? And so she just breaks down. Everything about this place feels like it's changed, and then the music starts, So it's like she was having this processing in real time. I listen to the music, and the lyrics. Everything about this place feels like it's changed, and then the music starts, and pretty soon she's breaking down. So what was your thoughts on the final breakdown, crying, just travesty that she looked like she was going through?
All right, I'm gonna go two different directions on you because you kind of went from the bar scene all the way to the end, and so I'm gonna go back to the bar scene for just a second. And Andy Garcia's character, Tommy's the only one that really knows that he's the head of the cartel. Tommy's the only one, and he hadn't told anyone. And Tommy's the only one that knows that. And Tommy has been adamant the entire time. I'm not getting involved with you. I'm not going to have anything to do with you. And yet he is now involved because of Cooper. And it alluded to the fact that she's going to get involved with him as well. So we're kind of setting up to where Tommy's going to be involved with the cartel, even though he knows exactly who they are and what they do, but it's going to be out of none of his own choice. It's going to be the people around him that force him to work with the cartel. And so I'm kind of interested to see if we go in that direction. The second part of that you're talking about, the one thing that I saw that I really picked up on in that scene, where at the end of it, she's mourning the loss of her husband. She begins to see it when they're all sitting in the bar together. She sees the love these couples have for each other. She made the comment, "I understand why you smoke now," after meeting Angela. And so she's not blind to what she's looking at, but she still sees love between them. And so she's mourning the loss of that love. And at the end of it, she's looking at the picture of her and her husband. She falls down, she howls and cries, not just cries, but howls. And then if you listen in the background, it turns into an entire pack of coyotes that are howling. And that really hit me because number one, they're in Fort Worth. I don't. There's not that many coyotes that are in the city in Fort Worth. So to me, that tells me it means something other than the fact that there were a bunch of coyotes out in the field. And it really brought me back to where we ended last season. And where we ended last season with Tommy several times going out in his backyard and looking at the lone coyote that was out there by himself. And really, you saw that portrayal where he saw himself as that lone coyote that's out there, standing against the world. And then you see this scene where the entire pack of coyotes is howling. You don't see them, but you hear them howling in the background. And I think it really kind of epitomized where this company is in the fact that their alpha dog has been taken off of the map, and the entire pack is now howling, trying to figure out its leadership, trying to figure out who's going to be the new alpha dog. Is it going to be Tommy? Is it going to be Demi's character? Is it going to be the cartel? Who's going to be the alpha dog? And so I really took a lot out of those coyotes howling in the background.
I didn't hear the coyotes howling in the background, but as you were talking about it, my memory, yeah, because there was an amplification of volume.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I was writing my notes, and so I looked up, and she's down on her knees, bawling, and I was taking a very similar paths in some aspects. With she had a realization that her husband was not an adulterer. She was expecting him to be, and he wasn't. In fact, he was a loving family man. In fact, in the recap, if you remember, they showed him at the game doing family things, making business deals. So part of it is her processing that, yeah, he built this house of cards in the shell game for us, at the same time too. So you have that layer of guilt as well that's thrown in there. I really believe that Demi Moore's character is so layered with storylines and social commentary, because she is becoming the patriarch, the alpha male, if you will, in the same way that Ozark brought in a female lead, in the same way that many of these other dramas bring. The Ghostbusters franchise brought in, I think, 8 women, or Ocean's 11 brought in 8 women. Ghostbusters did. So there's a female empowerment thing going on. So that this part isn't ordinary, but they're using it to really do new storylines for females in terms of how it might impact in a way that's never been done before. That's what I'm noticing from this, Warren. Are you seeing that at all, about how a female that's in a position of power, you're starting to see how it impacts differently than when a man is in power?
Yeah, and I think it's really clever the way that Taylor Sheridan set this one up, because she is in that position. But like you said, she actually says that in when it comes to having affairs, her husband potentially having affairs, she says he was a Boy Scout when it came to that regard. But she also doesn't hide from the fact that he was doing some things in business practice that were maybe not legitimate. But the key, I think, that you have to look at it is if she becomes the head of this company and she stays in the company, it's by her choice. And she even talked about it. I want it to be so that he's remembered in a positive way, that he's remembered for something beneficial. Because in all of the pyramid schemes and everything that he did, they several times in this episode they emphasize the fact that she knows where her money is, the trust fund and everything that was set for her, the trust fund that was set up for her kids. She's financially stable, and she doesn't have to be a part of this company if she doesn't want to. She can step out of it at any point in time. So it's not a female empowerment from the standpoint of you're putting a woman under oppression where she has to fight because she has no other choice. They've really set it up in a more powerful way in the fact that she has a choice. If she fights, it's because she wants to do it for her husband's legacy. If she wants to fight, it's because she wants to run the company and do something on her own. She doesn't have to do it in order to save herself and save her family. And so I think that actually adds more power to the potentiality of her character.
A lot of different storylines happening throughout this episode and this season. As you were talking about the cartel, I started having flash forward thoughts about what's going to happen to Sam Elliott's character, and I didn't like it. Um, the cartel is kind of playing the role of the slick oil salesman, Warren, right now. You know, that stereotype, you know, that Seriana and other pop culture shows have had as far as the, you know, the slick Willie, slick oil salesman, if you will. Their teeth sparkle when they smile, type of a thing, you know. And the oil, Tommy Norris is that rough. You know, very interesting how Ariana and Tommy Norris both hit people with bottles, okay, with glass. It actually, I think they're doing that on purpose because Cooper's gravitating to her, you know, power in the same way that his dad is. You know, you always go for somebody that either your mom or your dad. So it's interesting that those two characters line up. But really, the way they're introducing the cartel is a more civil way this season. Like, actually, they're the legitimate investor, but they're the cartel. So, you know, they're going to chop your head off with a machete at any time. At least that's what we think. But Billy Bob's the one using violence and threats and calling the police and all that. You know, he's the one who's actually kind of doing the unethical stuff. So to me, it's very interesting because in the long game, that's when you see the ethics really start to play out and the true intention come. Do you think they're going to play the long game, or do you think they're going to introduce that the oil industry is really the cartel and the cartel is actually a legitimate business now?
I think they're definitely going to do the latter of those two.
Are you kidding me?
No, I think they're going to at least for a while. I think they're going to
I
do that.
thought this was a layup for you, and oh no, you had to block it. Okay, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
No, I think it's the latter of those two from the standpoint of, one of the things that I have contested about this entire show is how it's continually comparing the oil industry to the drug cartel. That came back up in this episode. And when the two of them got together and they talked about, remember, I told you, you're just like me. I told you, you're just like us. And so I think they're going to play that game for a while now. That, reinforcing the idea that the oil industry is no different, that capital business is no different than what the drug cartel is doing. Several things that Garcia's character said throughout this entire thing was about how we're doing the same thing that capitalists do, and we're and so I think they're going to play that game for a while. I don't like it. I don't like comparing the oil industry to the drug cartel. I don't like comparing it to venture capitalism. And I really didn't like the idea where Tommy, Billy Bob Thornton's character, Tommy, when he's explaining to her that, that he should have sold this company a long time ago, because you get into this business, you build it up and you sell it. That's the goal, because if you stay in it, then you're going to get burned. Everybody who does gets burned. I live here in a state where we're talking about oil and gas companies that are in their fourth and fifth generation here. That's just not a true statement. Yes, there are people who get into the oil and gas industry if that's their goal. Their goal is to go out and build a huge company as fast as they possibly can and sell it and get out. Yes, I have no doubt there are companies that do that and people that do that. But there's also people that are independents in the industry that it's their life legacy, their family legacy that's passed from generation to generation to generation, just like farming and ranching. And so I don't like that parallel, but I think they're going to stick with it.
I thought that was a little interesting too, and Tommy said that, because my first thought was that no, you might flip leases and some things along those lines, but generally you don't sell the company, because communities are built off of oil and gas companies like that. Yeah, like you just said, there's fourth, fifth generation type of a thing. So it's not a pump and dump tech company. It's not like, yeah. So well, I overall I liked it. I really enjoyed this episode. Oh, I did have one question for you. The coyotes, because I agree that the howling, the coyotes, the two episodes that you referenced from last season, they were coyotes that were in there. Now, to me, the way that you were mentioning this was almost more of a wolf alpha male type of a thing than coyotes, because to me a coyote is more of a jackal or a hyena, although we don't really romanticize them like that, or I should say de-romanticize them like they do over across the pond. But a coyote technically would be our scavenger, correct? And a wolf would be noble. So you are like, because the way that I was actually interpreting that before you went back to the alpha male, and it was her cubs calling, or her pack calling, was that actually it was a bunch of hyenas and a bunch of jackals all around her ready to pounce, because they realize she's weak and she's waiting to get pounced on. So what say you on that?
Yeah, so you're right in how we perceive coyotes and how we kind of understand them. We tend to separate them from the wolf. The wolf's noble. The coyotes are scavengers, and yes, they are scavengers. They're scavengers that go out, but they're still pack animals. They're pack
Mm-hmm.
animals, just like any other dog breed that's out there. So much so that one of the things coyotes are known for is out in the country. We'd always have to be a little bit concerned, because when we start having coyotes around, they call to domesticated dogs, and they will actually lead a domesticated dog away to either, if it's strong enough, join the pack, and if it's not strong enough, to kill it. And so they will draw away your domesticated dogs, and so a lot of you do have that pack mentality where they're not hyenas that all act independently and just happen to run around together. They do have a power structure that's a part of that pack. That's just like maybe even more so than a wolf, because we talk about the lone wolf, because the male alpha wolf tends to be by themselves a lot more, and a coyote, the alpha dog in the coyote pack, tends to run with the pack, and lead the pack, whatever alpha dog that is. So there's two different ways of looking at it. I don't know which way he's going. Is he looking at it more as how we traditionally see them from from a humanist perspective, or how they actually function as an animal breed? I don't know.
I've always looked at the coyote and I liked the coyote. It's never been, a scavenger to me, if you will. And actually, a week before our snow came, about 3 days ago, 4 days ago, something like that, is when we got into the freezing temperatures up here in the Minnesota Dakota country. And about a week before the snow came, a coyote actually tried to lure my dog. We were down at the river, and up at the top of the hill, I noticed there was a coyote, and she was trying to lure my Vizsla Chesapeake into play. And who knows what play is? A week before winter, could have been food, or hey, we need another warm body, because I've had outdoor cats that will go and live with coyotes for a couple weeks during the coldest spill. They'll huddle up together in the shelter belt to stay warm and things like that. So amazing creatures. But I wanted to know if it was more of the scavenger, like a Jekyll or a stereotypical hyena ready to attack, or like where's our alpha? Who's our new alpha? Confusion amongst the pack type of a thing. Because hey man, coyotes are played several ways in pop culture too. From Native Americans, they're revered. From story writers, they're like a jackal and a hyena ready to pounce.
And don't forget the Roadrunner. They're made fun of.
Yeah, what's up with that, huh? They are. Well, that's about all I got. I do want to just end with the safety measure one more time, because one of the things that the crude life, um, the first year that we were in business, we were trying to find what direction we wanted to go with a lot of different things. And so we looked for a market that wasn't out there. And everybody was talking politics when it came to the oil and gas industry. So we actually had a rule, let's not talk politics. If somebody wants to come on and talk policy, that's fine, but we won't throw any gas on the fire. Let's just whatever. And here's why: is because we found out very quickly by enveloping ourselves, embedding ourselves in the industry, that it is one of the coolest, innovative industries that you can see. And after about 6 months, I actually was like talking to people in Fargo on the east side, which is very, blue actually, that, the oil and gas industry is the leader in the environmental movement actually. And so when I see these little safety monitor things that help you stay alive because, rotten egg gas comes up, and you've got all these pipeline pig sensors, and you've got now drone activation things that are checking methane leaks and all these different, that's in the same way the microwave came from the Department of Defense. All of this environmental safety monitoring equipment essentially is coming from the energy industry, aka oil and gas industry. And so I did want to end with that, Warren, that one of the reasons that we continue to stay around like we do is because these are the stories that are really cool. Is the innovation and just all of the ways that the oil and gas industry, whether it's recycled water, whether it's sensors, whether it's the 1976, was it a hydrogen sulfate leak that they're still talking about today on Landman, because and the BP explosion they're still talking about because more technology is coming out of it. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now because I don't get on it too often. But what are your thoughts on that in terms of my comment when I say things like the oil and gas industry really is the leader in the environmental movement?
Oh, there's absolutely no doubt about it. I mean, you want to look at environmental progress, look at what the oil and gas industry has done. Look at what we have done from the days where, when oil was first, when we first began to pump oil out of the ground, we poured gasoline on the ground and floated it down rivers and floated it down stream beds because we didn't know what to do with the gasoline. We're talking back in the 1800s. We were harvesting oil for the kerosene to replace the fluid in lamps. So that's number one thing we did was save the wells because we replaced well oil with the kerosene, and we had no idea what to do with gasoline. So it was too volatile. So they just started pouring it out down riverbeds. We've gone from that to one of the safest, most technically innovative industries that has ever existed in mankind, if not the most. And we've come that long ways by through a lot of mistakes that we learn from very quickly in order to not repeat those mistakes. The amount of innovation, the amount of technology, the amount of oversight, regulatory practices that go into the industry make it incredibly safe today compared to where it was. Now, it's not a quote safe industry. There are some hard jobs that are out there working on the drilling platforms, working it out in the field. I mean, it's still a very dangerous job. But we have come leaps and bounds in protecting the environment and making it safer for humanity. And because of that, we're experiencing the greatest quality of life that humans have ever experienced on this earth. And so don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We have to understand how much oil and gas has allowed humanity to flourish. And the fact of the matter is we are not done innovating yet. We continue to develop greater technology to keep us safe. We continue to develop greater technology for fuel and energy efficiency. And all of these things are going to continue to help humans live a better life.
Now, I don't know if the state of Texas has invested in Landman, but next episode they're going to head up to the Panhandle, it looks like, for a funeral. Warren, I believe that's your old stomping grounds. Were they heading up to Lubbock, did they say, for the funeral?
No, they're going somewhere up north of Lubbock. I don't remember exactly where it is. That's Lubbock's where I came from today to get back to Kansas after the Thanksgiving break. But
Maybe they said Amarillo.
I think it was a smaller town somewhere somewhere up,
Huh.
maybe Plainview, maybe in Plainview. I can't remember,
Plainview? Okay. But
but it's
Panhandle, right? I got
somewhere in
did I get
Panhandle.
that right?
It may be the town. It actually may be the town of Panhandle is where they're going.
Oh,
Um,
you got to be kidding me. Now you've got me really confused. Okay.
there's actually a
So,
town called Panhandle, and so, but yes, that's my stomping grounds, and that's a very different world than the Midland Odessa area. The oil industry up there is very different. You're up on top of the Cap Rock. You're in the high plains up there, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens when they head up to Panhandle.
and one last thing, I guess I just noticed in my notes that I didn't even realize apparently Tommy and Angela are going to get married. I thought they were. I think they even made a point of that they just kind of everyone assumed they were. But
Yeah.
um, do you think that's foreshadowing that there's going to be a wedding? Like, because if there is, I anticipate it's going to be a hot mess times 10. There's going to be cake flying everywhere. It's like one of her dinners, except at a wedding party type of a thing. So.
Well, I hope there's not going to be a wedding because if there is going to be a wedding, there will have to be an entire episode completely dedicated just to the wedding. And I'd rather see something else, but because if you watch just one of her meals that she prepares and how those meals go down, I don't know how you could fit an entire wedding into just one episode.
Oh, it would be hilarious because all she wants to do is spend money. I mean, she's just fantastic, absolutely fantastic. But, well, Warren Martin, Kansas strong. We'll be back again next week, as I'm not sure what the name of the episode is, but it sounds like there's a funeral involved. Sam Elliott, I did take a look at a few of the advanced photos for next episode, and there's even a trailer on the Crude Life as well. But Sam Elliott will be back. And so will Warren, so will myself. And folks, we'll catch you on the flip side here.